my name is Brian Oram. I'm a licensed professional geologist, born and raised in Wyoming Valley in coal country. I grew up playing in combined sewer overflows in the streets when they flood, and on mine drainage sites. Graduated from Wilkes University with a Earth and Wildlife Science degree. Went on, worked for a consulting company working in the lab. Went on from a master's degree from Penn State University. Could not stand my instructors there, so especially my advisor. I did not go on for a PhD. I had 3 job offers when I graduated with my master's degree. My first one was in Boston, working for Stone & Webster, making $95,000 a year. Problem is, the only place you see trees are in pots. Growing on, that's not for me. I had a job offer in White Plains, New York, working with, I think, Malcolm Purdy. That was going to be driving all over the country, looking at things, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. And that was like 70 grand a year. And then I had a job offer in Poconos for $18,500. Found myself a cabin on 100 acres for $200 a month, and that's where I started my career. Where I'm at right now is, after that, worked there for a while. I then went to Wilkes University. I worked at Wilkes for 23 years. And then basically, one part of my job was this. I, at Wilkes, spearheaded the education outreach program to private citizens. For 23 years, I spent my biggest effort was to encourage you guys to test your water. That's my whole life was there. We did have a laboratory certified at the time, and we did informational water testing. In August, I left Wilkes. I've always had my consulting practice, and I decided that I'm just going to continue with the consulting practice. I apologize, I can't go backwards. It's a brand new clicker, and it only works one way. Don't know why. My talk is getting the waters tested, the Marcellus Shale factor. And for me, it's important to have that tone when we talk about this. Even though the Marcellus Shale is the newest thing in the area, our history and the natural geology of the area is what actually controls what we eat, drink, and have to deal with. It's just one more factor. We can't ever forget the old stuff that went on. The Bendix Superfund site. Can't forget that. Can't affect the past agricultural uses. The past activities where they used to bury Civil War soldiers and then bomb them with arsenic. Can't forget that when we're trying to establish a baseline to protect groundwater quality and document it. Because it's never been done to this level ever before. This is me, BF Environmental, professional geologist, soil scientist, licensed well driller. It's not hard to be a licensed well driller in the state of Pennsylvania. Costs $60. Not have to be trained, no certification required. Yes, lucky enough I've only drilled one well 20 feet, and that's about it. I think that's all you'd ever want me to drill your well. It's not my expertise. The one area we also fund is called the water-research.net. Everything I know about drinking water quality and water quality is there for free. We do about 2,000 unique visitors a day. So if you ever want to know anything, water-research.net is there. If you don't find it, you email me and I'll find an answer to your question. No charge. BF Environmental Consultants, again, these are all the things I do. My wife requires me to do this now that I don't work anywhere. Put a list up of what I do. I do apologize. What I'm actually more proud of is the Water Research Center. This is everything we do, and in most cases we do it for free. All self-funded. Don't give up on me. There we go. Wanted to give you an idea of my perspective of what I've done for the last year and a half. I was invited out up to Dimmock during the EPA sampling. That was a great opportunity to be there while EPA was sampling some of the private wells. I was invited by a homeowner. The EPA sampling took 4 hours to collect one sample. There's no way any private well owner could afford that amount of time and effort. Their team consisted of 5 people to do that. I do a lot of tours for water treatment and reuse facilities. Over on the right is a drilling. I was on the platform up in Towanda during a big change. Been on site during hydrofracking operations. Again, I don't work for any natural gas company. I've denied every master service agreement I've been offered. I like what I do. I like to be able to come to a room and have you being comfortable that, number one, I'm not being paid to be here. Nobody's funding the Water Research Center but me, and I don't have a master service agreement with anybody. What you get is me, my manganese. Now, what's associated with saline water? Barium, strontium, lithium, sodium chloride sometimes, not always. They actually found places back in 1937 where people were using the methane gas to cook with. So that's supersaturated conditions. And in a couple of townships, like Middletown Township, there was actually saline and brine water seeps associated with gas at a depth of only 300 feet. That is not Marcellus shale gas. That's gas out of the Casco Formation. Then they also identified springs in multiple townships, and I apologize, I don't have any idea how to pronounce the first one. When I went to school, they taught whole language. All right, I have dyslexia. They taught whole language. I have no idea how to pronounce words. I'm being very honest. So the town is Apollocan? Apollocan? Okay. Auburn I get, because my mom was a hairdresser. And Franklin. All had saline seeps. Now, this is, you can, if you don't think I'm lying, I have a website where I actually found a 1937 study. It's there, and the map is there. So that's our history. Now, when I talk about this, there's some people that make me say this, and when I say this, they for some reason think that I believe that methane gas migration can occur. We can't have problems with well construction. Well, I don't think we can have that. But the important part of this is that you need to get baseline testing done now. That was a big problem in some areas where nobody bothered even testing for methane gas because either well, that's why I have a problem with Penn State, they didn't recommend it, and neither did the DEP. So get your baseline testing done now. At some level, you need to get it done. If you're on a budget and don't know what to get tested for, if you're not in an area where the gas company is actively testing, give me a call. We'll talk about it, what's going on in your area, and I'll give you the list of key parameters that will work for you and what you need to do that as most cost effective, to try to attempt to protect yourself, to document your existing condition. Because we have a past history here that water quality looks exactly like what would be caused by a migration from a gas company, pre-development. And the data suggests that this may occur naturally up in this area anywhere up to 10% of the time. So at least 10% of the private wells may have fingerprints that look like somebody else did it. And in fact, they didn't. It's important to document this now. 50% is okay to drink. The rest of it, we got iron, manganese problems, sediment, gas. That's actually somebody's water sample, that green cup. Believe it or not, it is. And then finally, bacteria. That's water in Pennsylvania. Do you think it's important to get baseline testing done now, even if there's no gas development going on? Yes. When I talk to people in Wayne County where they're under a restriction with Delaware River Basin Commission right now, they're like, hey, should you get the testing done now? Oh yeah, whatever you can. Get something to document those conditions, because we have these problems. If you have a problem, fix it. You can get some of those fixed. So let's be honest, we have problems. And why do we have those problems? Well, we have them because most of the private wells are poorly constructed. It wasn't you, the homeowner, that hired that guy, it was the builder. Or it's an old cable tool rig, where the casings were just tack welded together. There's maybe only 20 feet of casing. No drive shoe, nothing to prevent or create a seal. Wells are too deep. I believe it or not, again, from the data in 1937, there are places where there's saline water at 300 feet. There are wells that are over 900 feet. You think they're tapping potentially some of that saline brine water? Oh yeah, absolutely. And what happens in those cases, those wells become the conduit that affect the person down gradient. I'll show you a slide of that. Those are things I found within 100 feet of a well. These last two slides are a dump. Right next to a dump, there's an artesian well where it says free spring water. Really? They're 200 feet apart. Okay, so when we talk about looking at baseline quality effect, there's not always a hard list of parameters to test for. Because when you do your baseline test, you should not only care about the Marcellus shale industry, but was there an old gas station nearby? Was there an old agricultural use? Is there an old dump? What are the other things that can affect that water quality that's not related to them? Because you need to document that. Is this. For 23 years, I was in rooms like this telling people to get your water tested. Took a very nice industry to come in and decide to do some industrial development to get you guys off your butt and make some testing. And what's happening is, in some cases, we're finding out that the water has elevated levels of arsenic, barium, and other things not related to any development. And people are completely shocked, surprised, and scared. And that's the fact. That's part of the factor. The other thing that part of the factor is, it's not just what goes on by them. I mean, how many people ever knew the history of the Bendix Superfund site? Not many. How many people knew that the Bendix Superfund site released TCE that affected the town, just downgrading of them? How many people knew that they did not propose a water line to service that town, that those people are serviced by individual private treatment systems in their home? Right. TCE is a carcinogen. That was never an idea. They were only a couple miles south of Montrose. That was never proposed to them. And the reason why other things were proposed further south was people were scared. People at Bendix, Superfund site in that town that actually had carcinogens in the water at elevated levels, never offered that. They were offered point-of-use treatment systems. But for some reason, we're going to be running a 13-mile water line, 13-mile cul-de-sac for methane? Doesn't make sense. This is an area where there had been no natural gas development at all. I harvested this data out. 49% of the people have water you can't drink because of total coliform bacteria. Of those, 20% had E. coli. All right, now everybody goes, hey, it's only coliform bacteria. I just shocked my well, no big deal. Oh, let me just stop you right there. How big is coliform bacteria? It's microscopic. Well, what's smaller than microscopic? Dissolved. What's dissolved in water? Road salt, organics, metals. So if my well is vulnerable to bacterial contamination, am I vulnerable to a spill from anybody? Yes. Am I vulnerable to a mining activity that occurs in my area? Yes. Iron, manganese, about around 10, 20%. Arsenic, about 6% of private wells had arsenic above the drinking water limit. I actually had one woman in her 80s. She was extremely sick. She had arsenic that was 12 times the drinking water standard, plus bacteria, plus E. coli, and she also had phthalates in the water. What are phthalates? If you ever heard any record or reports about using plasticizers in bottles and don't reuse your water bottles because the plasticizers leach out, well, guess where they are? They were in the groundwater, and 6% of the private wells have it above the drinking water limit. Why? Well, let's think. How many people have black coil pipe down your well? Maybe you don't know. How about when you go to your well, you see the pipe coming from the foundation, out of the foundation of your house to the tank, the blue tank. How many people have pipes that look black, not metallic? That's black coil pipe. Black coil pipe is soft plastic. They use it down the well because it goes down nice and easy. Guess what? It leaches plasticizers. It leaches plasticizers, at least from looking at the data. It will leach more plasticizers if you have a bacterial problem, because the bacteria actually grow on it and cause them to leach out. I was totally shocked when I saw that. I didn't expect that at all. And these are all wells that were purged for 45 minutes or more. So this is not water sitting in the pipeline. And finally, near the end, it's hard to read here, is that down at the bottom, those last four things: high TDS, high sodium, high chloride, high radiologicals. This is an area with no natural gas drilling. This is an area when it was drilled, they did not find production levels of methane gas in either the Catskill or the Marcellus. I have almost 5% of the wells that have a saline water impact. That's the exact impact. If you wanted to suggest a Marcellus shale impact, that's exactly how it would look. Here's a data set in an area with no Marcellus shale gas, no drilling, and 5% of the wells already show that fingerprint. Why? Because it's a baseline problem. It's there pre-existing. Next. Water level's higher, it actually comes up in her well and pushes into the neighbor's well. Her well, because it's too deep, adversely affects her neighbor's well. There is no gas drilling down there at the time of this collection. Next. Methane gas migration, next. It's been a hidden issue because it's clear, colorless, odorless. We have some background levels that are super saturated, and I was lucky enough to light my first well in 1989. Next. We get methane gas migration not related to shale. We could have next. We have from wetlands. We get biogenic gas. Next. Hit the next. We got landfill gas from buried landfills. Finally, we can have some thermogenic biogas that comes from the Catskill that'll come up next. And then from lake sediments, we can have some more biogenic gas in effect of private well next. That all happens in your area. These are all the things that contribute to your background level of methane right now. Next. I have a website. We talk a little bit more about methane gas and give you action items depending on the level in your water. I believe you need to take some level of action as low as 2 milligrams per liter. And all that is vented. Next. Where we can get the methane gas out of the Catskill Formation, this is a quarry and Dimmock I worked on. And if you look at that, you can actually see some coal and some organic material. That's the source of that gas. Next. Methane gas variability. So next, one more time. I showed you an example where 2 wells right next to each other, where one well affected another well. Well, here's an example where 2 wells are on the same property, and the only difference is depth. The one well that's 500 feet deep has a methane level of 700 milligrams per liter. One that's 300 feet deep, only 1. That 200-foot difference in the depth of the wells was enough to make that much difference. How far apart are they? They're about 10 feet apart. So we have variability that's spatial, we have variability that's temporal, and we have variability that's vertical. Right? We have to work as a community to figure out what's going on, right? You can't be out there by yourself going, hey, because it varies, variations over time, variations vertical, right? And there's variation spatial. It's too much to solve at once. Next. So, and it changes. So if you want to bias your data on methane gas, you can go out and collect it when it's going to be the highest. So when the gas can't get out of the ground normally, it has to get out of your well, those are the conditions. Again, if you want to bias your data. That's up to you, but that's what it is. Next. I like this. This was something I stole off of Cabot's website. What I'd like you to do is squint at it. The larger the circles, is the higher the methane gas. Hit the next button. If you squint at it, the square is Dimmock. Next. You can start seeing those lines that connect the dots. Right? So I said, well, maybe that suggests there's some surface fracturing where this gas could get out. So then hit next. I drew a line through Dimmock, and I said, oh, right, there's a line right there, surface fracture. You know? And does that fracture exist anywhere else? Hit next. Wow, yeah! And guess what? They're almost at the same spacing. All right? So what this does is it supports the idea that you can have background levels of methane gas. You can have significant spatial variability. Where you have it here, don't have it for thousands of feet, and have it again, naturally. All right? You have to understand that. So this is my explanation of it. Again, I'm not talking about the case. I wasn't involved in the baseline testing in Dimmock. Next.
What is this?
Next. This is a kind of funny slide. The point of this slide is when we do baseline testing and sampling, you can normally see that 3 parameters of water quality dropped over time and stabilized. 1 parameter rose over time. And that parameter tends to be methane, at least in Nick's example. So somebody that comes in, most of you guys, when you use your water, you let it run for 5 or 10 minutes. Nobody lets their water run normally for 45 minutes, right? Yeah. But in this particular case, that's what it took for me to see a spike in methane gas. Next, I'll show you why. What happens when we draw down the well, we take pressure off the formation. Next. Well, that's where the methane may be. The lower the pressure, we got some methane gas in red. I apologize for the lighting. Next, and what happens is it starts to outgas. All right, so it's important when you're doing your baseline sampling, the person that does it for you allows a long enough purging time for the water quality to stabilize. And that's an example here would be where a person never experienced a methane gas problem, ever, because they use their water for a very short period of time. When we come in and purge the well properly, we find methane at high levels.
No.
Did anything change? Absolutely not. The only thing that changed was your use. Oh, wait a second. So now I got use change, spatial change, vertical change, and temporal change with time. All right? All play into this. Next. You know, you see the pictures with the jugs of brown water? Right?
Where?
Well, And I go, I'm not going to say anything about the methane in the jugs of brown water, but the samples on the left were 2 samples from Dimick that I put in check for iron bacteria. The water was clear, checked it for iron bacteria. The water is now what? What color? So part of that problem is iron bacteria. That bacteria is native to the soil. It's not something that's been added. Next. I got called about a case of purple water. Yep, gonna finish. Look at it. I'm trying to sweat at the time. Purple water, I always want to go see purple water. They said there was natural gas drilling going on. Checked it. High bacteria levels. Next. Last thing that can hit, and we'll probably stop here, was cases where, and it's a great place for me to end, is when we're drilling a Marcellus shale well, there's been significant changes over the drilling process. Hit next. We put the conductor casing, we drill down, keep going. We drill down, we send a temporary casing. Next, we drill in. As we drill next, we have the mud stuff coming back to the surface. As that mud comes back to the surface next, you can start bringing the cuttings next. The cuttings start coming back up with it. Next. Sometimes you can lose circulation if there's not enough casing. And we can start seeing that where some of the material or cuttings are coming up to the surface. Next. Next. So some of that's coming up. We're getting that next. Going out. The private well that's properly constructed, not impacted by that activity. This goes back to the Penn State data, where they set out and they found an impact. Next. So normally what's going on is those private wells that have enough casing, adequate casing, are doing fine. Next. And what next? One more time. And now we have it up. We're going to the line pit that we used to use in most cases. Next. So we have the line pit, and in some cases some liners leaked, especially out in the pavilion work. Next. And what this goes to, one more time, should be a box. What this goes is how we can make change. And let's happen. What were the problems here? Well, the first problem was not enough casing, and we lost circulation. Well, that changed. 2009, 2010, there's a change in the regulations. That happened. The other thing that changed is most drillers switched from a lot of the mud rotary work they were doing in the freshwater aquifer, and they either went to air or no muds to eliminate that problem. And finally, we went to closed loop drilling. So that solved all those problems, theoretically. One problem didn't get solved. The private well that was poorly constructed. So no matter what we do, no matter how much we make the activities we do better, no matter what they are, whatever industry they might be, until we identify and fix the private wells that are inducing contamination, we will never solve that problem. Thanks a lot. I think that's my hour.